Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Curious Human. This is Jake checking in with my fellow Curious Humans.
Why, hello,
Hello.
everyone. We're all here. The gang's all here, and boy, are we curious today.
That's right. We got Currents, Brett, and Poe. And today I wanted to talk about social justice warriors and political correctness. Now, if you are someone who has been on the internet and, say, frequents popular social media websites like Reddit, for example, you may or may not be, or especially if you're someone who reads the Huffington Post, you may be aware of individuals who usually identify themselves as social justice warriors, or maybe that's just a derogatory term applied to them, but these people see themselves as battling for the good of lesser privileged people. And privilege is probably the key word there. The idea is that someone like myself, and actually everyone else on this podcast, because we're all white males, okay? Matter of fact, we're all
Yes.
college-educated white males, actually, that we are pretty much the creme de la creme
Great
of
criminal
privilege,
record.
okay?
Go for it.
And you might say, you'd be like, you know what, Jake? You don't know what you're talking about. These people are just exaggerating. There's no reason why these people should be basically discriminating against us. We're white males. There's nothing wrong with us. Why are these people saying that we're privileged? And a quick example that I can come up with, one of my former coworkers, his name is Amico, and he applied for a bunch of human resource. He was a human resource person at the call center that I worked at, and he applied to a bunch of different of human resources positions. And he just filled out a normal resume. We'll say he sent out 20. Okay, he got no calls back, and then he changed the name at the top of his resume to David Saunders. And you know what? He got like 5 calls back, and now I cannot testify to the authenticity of his experiment, if he followed any special protocols, blah blah blah. But simply because his name is very different and it sounds very like African, it's a I won't say his last name for the podcast for the sake of his confidentiality. But anyway, pretty much he is a person without privilege. He doesn't have the privilege of having a normal name. In our society, if someone has a name that they think sounds weird or unusual, that an employer thinks is weird or unusual, I mean, there's so many reasons why a human resources person or a hiring manager just throws your resume away anyway, okay? And if they see that name at the top, they're less likely to hire you. When I went to grad school, one of my fellow grad students, her first name is Princess. Okay? She experienced similar problems trying to get employment.
Well, that's
Now,
just fucking weird. I mean, princess,
Right.
really? What the fuck?
Right. Well, guess what? You'd be like, you know what?
I don't know, man. Like, you really need another fucking Katie. Like, I definitely see both sides there, but that's not the topic.
Princess.
Right.
I'm
Well,
not gonna. I would just rip the resume in half just because that's a stupid fucking name.
well,
I don't care.
when she does put out a resume, she just puts a single initial P and then her middle name and her last name. Right.
I would get my name changed. That's her first mistake.
Well, here's the problem, though, right? If you, I looked up the definition of what social justice is, and it's basically ensuring equal assignment or distribution of rights, privilege, opportunities, and resources in society. And so, in a way, just because you have a weird name doesn't mean that you should just be automatically discounted from being able to get this job, right?
Right.
This could be a whole podcast itself, man. Like, if I had a kid, I'd probably name him like Odysseus or Khal Drogo or something. Like, I think we could talk about this for a minute. But
Well, I was
Please
trying
don't
to
have
come up with a
children.
solid example of what privilege would be, because none of us ever has to think about like our name. I've never thought that someone would would not hire me because of my name. And I am privileged in that sense. And mind you, this is something that people have control over. Well, you don't have, well, like Ryan suggests, he's like, hey, well, you should change your name. Now, granted, that's going to take some money and some time, and maybe you like your name and you like your identity that you've associated with that name.
Was this girl black or something, or was she white?
She was black. She is black.
Well, I mean, it goes beyond just a name, too, obviously, as you know. People are sometimes going to look at you if you're a person of color and probably think negative thoughts about you or be scared of you. So it's definitely
your color is something you can't change.
It's not fake. But the problem I see with social justice warriors, and this is just my opinion on it, I'm not entirely educated on everything that they say and do on the internet, but they seem to be very ultra aggressive towards the people that are of privilege, and I don't necessarily think that they're being reasonable.
All right, so this is the first time I've ever heard of social justice warriors. I do not frequent these trolling forum boards like you all do. So
it's not just forums, though. It's in universities. It's everywhere.
Well, okay, so just help me out here. Help me out here. So give me an example of how these. Okay, so social justice warriors, they're trying to, create a society that has more equitable distribution of resources and privilege. How are they crossing the line, do you think?
I think that they are crossing the line because they're denying you your sense of agency and your ability to participate in the necessary dialogue that has to happen. For example, there was this video that I saw on Huffington Post, and it was called "What is White Feminism?" Right? It's like, wait, what? Wait a second. There's such a thing as white feminism? I didn't realize white feminism was a thing. Okay, and this video goes into detail about how, while it's true that white women are in ways discriminated against, they aren't discriminated as much against as women of color are. If you're a Hispanic woman, a black woman, maybe an Asian woman, whatever your ethnicity is, these women are more likely to be discriminated against. And basically the gist of it is, and they said at the end, it's like white women, like, you need to shut the fuck up. And that's a direct quote from the video, that you, as a white woman, cannot participate in a discussion about your struggles in the world, okay, if there are women of color also in the discussion, because you cannot possibly know or understand their position and what they have went through. And while I agree somewhat with that idea that, it's impossible for me to know 100% what, say, Aaron Currents, what you experienced today, there's no way I can totally know that.
All right.
I can at least show
let me get to some real world stuff.
No, hold on. I think he was on the trail wrapping up the point there.
And I can also it's like the idea that you can't know something unless you've done it or you've experienced it. And while I agree there is a special sort of grounded knowledge from when, say, you've experienced racism or discrimination, but I can still imagine and I can read other people's accounts and I can listen to what people are saying about their experiences and still come to an informed judgment. And
well, obviously, yeah.
And so I don't, in my mind, with these, I'll call them extreme social justice warriors, they're basically denying other people's ability to participate in achieving social justice, which is what they're supposed to be doing in the first place.
Listen, let's go over some tangible examples here, because it's not just stuff that's going on the internet. It's basically happening in universities. So I brought up an article here just to reference. Okay. California trains professors to avoid microaggressions. So what are microaggressions? They are subtle actions, usually unintentional, that perpetuate discrimination against disadvantaged groups, even in environments where overt discrimination has been abolished. So some examples of microaggression that they have tried to incorporate into this school's policy, and this is a true fact. This isn't some made-up article. Examples of microaggressions include describing America as a melting pot, This is because it orders people to assimilate. Stating that there is only one race, the human race, because this denies the significance of a person's ethnic or racial history. Asking Asians, Hispanics, or Native Americans to speak up more, because this is pathologizing foreign norms and treating white norms as normal. Using he as a generic pronoun for all people. It makes the male experience universal and female experience invisible. Using forms where individuals must identify as male or female because it excludes the full LGBT experience.
I kind of agree with that one, frankly.
I guess so.
We're kind of widely and radically missing the point here. Like the problem that I see, like that thing that Jake sent out about the liberal professor talking about how our liberal students scare her or whatever. I don't think the problem with the social justice warrior movement, if we want to adopt the pejorative as its name, is that it's somehow I'm going to be threatened because I'm a white male and I'm the bad guy now. I think the problem is that it creates, and especially in universities where we have we're supposed to be edifying young, almost children, it creates a culture where you're basically not allowed to suffer enough to grow, and so you just have everybody anxiously avoiding conflict and feeling entitled to be that way. I don't think the problem is that somebody's going to come on the podcast and ridicule us for being born with penises and no melanin. I think the problem is that somebody who otherwise is concerned about the way that people in the society treat one another and is trying to be a good neighbor and an active citizen is basically going to squander their potential because they were told that it's morally laudable to fail to challenge yourself.
All right, so there's two issues here, right? One, we got the issue that Jake brought up originally, that when these social justice warriors sometimes say, well, you can't even comment or contribute to the discussion because you can't relate with us. And then there's this other thing, this microaggression thing. So I just want to say something about the first thing, about the how, like you said, the black feminism or whatever doesn't want white feminists to participate in the discussion. Does this particular brand of extreme social justice warriors, do they believe in allies? Like, if I'm familiar with the gay community, they believe in having non-gay allies help them out. Do extremists do not believe in getting help from other people?
You're bringing up a strong point, Aaron, and it's from what I've seen, it seems as though
how do you be an ally to an extreme social justice warrior?
They're trying to create division on the left. Basically, they want to create a conflict where they piss off and they basically radicalize and alienate the other people in the conversation, right? And then these people are just like, hey, you know what, fuck you, fuck these people or whatever, and then it basically just shows that the social justice warriors, it's sort of say in this example, a colored feminism or whatever, basically, if you're a colored feminist and you manage to upset some white feminist or whatever, you intensify the conflict, you make the white feminists write you off and say terrible things about you, and then you use that as an example of your whole point. Right? Your point is that
these people are really extreme, right? It's like a fringe movement, right? This isn't how most liberals think, right?
I would say you're right, because I can't even describe, right? I can't even describe this extreme social justice acts as being liberal, because it's not open to more than one perspective. It's only open to one, and that is that the person who is the most disadvantaged, the person who has the least amount of privileges, has the priority to speak and has the most important voice. And this, of course, also leads to a downward spiral of who is the most prime person in the world? Is it a handicapped, transgender,
Jewish black dude?
They would definitely really bad. A man always has privilege.
Oh, black woman. Yeah, you're right. Oh no, it's transgendered, a Jewish black person.
Yeah, something like that.
They already have a lot of power.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we get it.
So all of a sudden,
yeah,
it's like holy shit, No, that's not how human communication works. That's not how. I mean, I'm talking to two trained philosophers. It doesn't matter who you are. It matters whether or not your ideas are correct. Okay? At the end of the day, isn't that what matters? Not. And so it's basically identity politics, like through the freaking roof. Suddenly, identity and labels have become everything. It's literally become everything. And I hate throwing that word extreme, or even throwing extreme in front of it. I hate using the word social justice warrior because now I'm just labeling someone something else, right? But for sake of
what do these people call their particular political stripe? What do they self-identify?
I think they just call it social justice.
All right, so these. Well, how do you turn that into a word describing social justicers? I don't know.
I apparently didn't research the topic adequately enough because I only know the derogatory
socially just.
The socially just, right? But remember this though, right? Like we've had past on our other podcast series, the Wonderlust podcast. We've had discussions about feminism, and actually the reason why this topic basically came back up is, I mean, I have conversations. I don't mean to like throw you under the bus or anything, Ryan, but you were basically treating, or when you're talking, you weren't really breaking down the label feminists. You're like, oh, these feminists, like they're saying like men have all this privilege and stuff, and it's like, well, or saying that men don't have opinions. I don't remember what you said, but it's like, dude, like you're talking about some like militant feminists. You're talking about some extreme feminists.
I think I just got into social justice warriors before you did. You guys didn't know what the hell I was talking about a year ago. And maybe I'm just looking at the fringe. And
I did, because I'm talking about it with them at the coffee shops.
Maybe this is the vocal minority or whatever, but for someone like me who isn't like ultimately that aware of feminism and stuff, if you go on the internet and that's all you see, that gives feminism a bad name. Mm-hmm. So they're ending up just fucking themselves because this polarizing bullshit is not going to be taken well. I mean, that's why Donald Trump and people like him are doing well. It's because this backlash against it's like basically two extremes. When you start,
you don't think Donald Trump is polarizing? I mean, I don't.
No, I don't think
you're not listening to what I'm saying.
Anything. I just think it's saying it's an ideology with adherents. Like okay, great.
I think Ryan's saying that Donald Trump is also extreme, and the reason he's doing well is because, one of the reasons is because some other extremists on the minority side have been angering and infuriating the majority of privileged folks.
It's like you're leading to divisiveness.
Yes.
What do you say, Mike?
No, I'm asking. So is that? I'm trying to make sure I understand.
Yeah, you come up with two polarizing ideologies that are both like extreme examples of one another. There's no common ground, and it turns people like me, who are, I guess I consider myself to be liberal and open-minded compared to most people. Maybe not as liberal as you guys, but generally speaking, I try to see things from not just my own view. I try to put myself in other people's shoes and stuff like that, which I think is a more liberal perspective. But if social justice warriors are capable, if their message is so flawed that it actually makes me hate them, and it kind of makes me feel like I want to be more conservative, then I think
you gotta be careful, Ryan. You got to make sure that you don't confuse their view with the rational and mainstream view of the people that are disenfranchised.
No, because I think when you take things to the extreme, eventually they may. Well, it's not working now. Eventually, they may be able to sort of pull people more in their camp if this thing catches on.
I think it's the idea of how terrorism works, right? Basically, the terrorist does some sort of terrible, outrageous thing, brings terror into an environment, and say with the United States, basically the United States ham-fistedly overdoes it, right? Overreacts, comes and tries to crush the terrorists, right? And instead, it just ends up making more terrorists in this vicious cycle. And so I think that what these people, I don't know if they're trying to do it, because that's almost like malicious, right? To say that these people who want social justice are taking extreme viewpoints and trying to basically split liberals and split leftists, right, into different camps. Basically, they are creating a larger enemy to their cause to perpetuate their cause. That's just totally crazy to me, as opposed to trying to build a coalition of allies. Although, to be honest with you, when I said earlier that I think it's something that I would primarily experience on the internet, I think it might have something to do with the way that the internet works, because in everyday society, you can't just project the way that you can with social media.
Yeah, if someone started talking shit to me, I would just punch them in the face in real life, but they can act...
Oh, really dude, you just ignore them and walk away. Like, who cares, right? But you see it show up in your social media, and you're like, what the hell is this? And you click a link, and all of a sudden you're on some, like, Tumblr that has all these memes talking about how men are slave trash. Huh?
Say that again, Mike.
I don't know if that's a microaggression. That's a macroaggression. It's a fucking fist coming right at your eyeball.
No, dude, it's a microaggression by the people who like are conflict avoidant. You know, on those of us who would rather just settle it. You know, like, well, now we have to fucking bring the lawyers in because Americans won't fight anymore. You know, I was actually just kind of joking there. I don't really see it that way, but it's interesting because like Jake always parses things in terms of expectation and communication, and I was thinking about Ryan's take on this, and I don't think you're afraid of these people. As you said, you would just hit them or whatever. You know, I think that you are.
I'm afraid of the pussification of society. That's probably a sexist
what
term.
You're afraid of the pussification of society?
Dude,
yeah.
That is hate speak right there. Couldn't you just use like wuss or something?
Everyone knows what I'm talking about. I don't really.
All right. Well, no. I didn't want to call you out a
sexist.
term. I just want to know what your real issue here is. That society is going to become more weak and politically correct and namby-pamby. Is that what your main concern is? Because I was going to say that I don't like these extremists. I think they're stupid. I don't listen to them.
Well, Aaron, it might not just be extremists. In 10 years from now, you might not be able to say anything. What I just said on this podcast
listen. That's hate speak. That's a trigger word. That's
they're attempting to control you. They're attempting
pussy.
All right, so hold on here. Let's talk about what you were talking about, those microaggressions. Because on the subject of these extreme social justice warriors or whatever, I guess I think they're idiots, but I'm not really hateful towards them or fearful of them, because we have just as many people that are as stupid as they are and as hateful as they are, but in positions of social privilege. And those are the people who can actually do real damage, the way I see it. You know, if we got some colored feminist going off about how nobody can relate to her and how we're all evil, we can just ignore her and throw her in a closet.
Well, ironically, most of the vocal
we got Donald Trump out there saying we need to deport all the Mexicans. We got to do something about that asshole, because he can hire people with guns to do it.
Power to enforce his idiocy.
Yeah, exactly.
No, actually, the funny part is the misrepresentation of who these people actually are. A lot of them aren't really people of color or other ethnicities. It's actually like white people with nothing better to do. They choose to get behind a cause. There was this article I was reading on CNN about this girl who she was white, and she would like tan and do her hair and try to fit in as like a black person. So you have all these kinds of strange people that just want to fit into different subcultures.
I mean, is that any worse than like, you know, getting a 60-hour-a-week job and neglecting your spiritual, whatever it is that like hippie assholes like me say that pisses off guys like Ryan? You know, like if you're like trying to be a successful white person or trying to be like a radical activist, like don't. They're both bad ideas, man. There's something organic about both paths. You know?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Like, I don't think. So you were talking about how this person on this example.
She was pretending to be black. She was actually like changed her name. She would say that she's black. Like that's
let her be black, man. What's wrong with that? I mean, I probably would
just be a white person that hangs out with black people. Why does she? That's a mental illness when you're actually trying to change your ethnicity.
She liked black culture. She identified. I mean, this is.
I don't have a problem.
I'm totally apologizing for her.
Yeah.
She became the president of a local NAACP chapter. Okay, that is how much she must have thought herself as being part of a black community. And the difference is that if you aren't black, okay, people are less likely. Why would people want you to be a leader in their community?
I have no
Don't you
idea.
think it's a little bit fucking weird that she would pretend to be black to join this community? Why can't she just go in, be herself?
Because they wouldn't. I don't think they would accept her as just this white woman.
So you think it's okay to misrepresent yourself, lie about your race, and
I don't think she's lying about her race. I think she just, she's living the existentialist dream.
It's
She's
not like
I will adopt the black identity,
Yeah, I mean,
that doesn't mean shit to me. I'm more worried about what you're worried about, Ryan. The political correctness that it seems to be sweeping these college campuses. I think that is a problem. I think if you can't call America a melting pot because it might offend somebody, I think if that's official policy, that's an issue.
not only that, but they have these things called trigger warnings now, where if there's like a violent or a rape scene in some kind of book that you might have to read, you can opt out. You don't have to do that. It's a coddling of the mind. It's basically saying, okay, cover your ears, cover your eyes.
Trigger warning? What's a trigger warning, exactly?
A trigger warning is basically anything that could possibly be viewed as traumatic, so that you are not subjected to it because it may resurface like bad memories, like PTSD.
How do you not know that, dude? We have like career records for like too much time spent in grad school. How have you never heard of a trigger warning? This is like,
and not only that,
listen. I actually did the research,
man.
so I know what a fucking trigger warning is. But I asked the question for the benefit of our listeners, asshole.
Well, let me just continue with what I was saying.
No, I want to ask you something, though. So, like, I was in Walmart the other day, and I saw they were selling a DVD with, like, old Popeye cartoons and, Daffy Duck cartoons, right? And on the back, it said, warning. It's like, it says, these cartoons represent the values and humor of a different time in America and a different cultural standards. Please be warned before you watch it. Would that count as a trigger warning?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, but I mean,
I don't think anything wrong with that.
What are we supposed to do that like
for little children? We're talking about adults.
It's not supposed to protect you from seeing something that might be perceived. It's more than a microaggression. It's supposed allegedly to protect people from being brought into a concretely traumatizing psychological space based on experiences that they've actually had in their life.
And do you know what psychologists actually say? Mike, do you know what psychologists actually say? They say that by avoiding the triggers, you make them worse.
Some psychologists
try to create a bubble to live in and pad every room and act like you're never going to bump your head once in a while. That's nonsense. I think that we're creating a culture.
I don't know what the psychologists say about it, but my intuition, like, I've actually been waiting a while to bring this up. I think it's a really useful dichotomy. Like, when you say social justice warrior, I think of, like, Nietzsche in Genealogy of Morals. He talks about, like, the difference between the warriors and the priests, Like, I think what we're talking about are social justice priests. Like, a social justice warrior would just go out and fight for his cause and bleed and fucking be done with it. But a priest, like, has to invent a sanitizing mythology because his constitution is too weak for bloodshed. So you end up with these people.
All right, I like that, Mike. Bernie Sanders is kind of a social justice warrior,
Well,
he's trying to do something about it.
Let me get in there on that. I think that I like what Mike said there, but I felt the need to interject that, given our acceptance of levels of privilege, you would see that men are more capable of inflicting more violence and physical change, okay? Whereas women are less capable to do so. And if they were going to be fighting against, say, men, right, that would be very challenging. Now, if you aren't describing using means of violence, if you're talking about organizing, creating groups, and going out there and challenging people, and, say, calling them out for being privileged and how they aren't doing anything for underprivileged people, then that's basically exactly what these social justice warriors are doing. I mean, sure, maybe some of it's on the internet, but as you can tell, the internet does matter. It does. It's not exactly going out in the street and protesting, but there have been some.
Yeah, I mean, the internet is the line between what's on the internet and what's actually happening in real life is being blurred. Like,
yeah, well, we're reaching that what's it called, futurism. We're reaching the singularity you're always talking about, right?
Well, this is more like some Black Mirror type shit. Have you guys seen that show yet? It's
a
British television show, but they touch on a lot of futurist themes, and one of the themes that seems to be reoccurring in the show, or at least on a couple of the episodes, is sort of the the blurring of the culture with the internet culture, and how we've become kind of strange voyeurists in these online spaces. But like in one of the episodes, basically they said that they kidnapped the princess or something, and they made the prime minister fuck a pig on live TV, and it was streamed on YouTube or something. And
Sure.
I mean, I don't know where I'm getting with that, but it just seems like the internet,
What?
like now politicians don't ignore the internet. Like, they'll do YouTube debates, they'll do this and that. They're all on Twitter doing hashtags and stuff. Like, these movements that are starting off in cyberspace become reality.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, just because the social justice stuff is starting on the internet doesn't mean that it's not going to be a larger picture in the next few years. I think that we've only really seen the beginning of this, and I think as a whole it can be a good thing, because I am a progressive person. Like, I'm glad that gay people can get married and stuff. I think that's absolutely silly that it took us that long to get there.
Yeah.
But I think there is a point where you start to cross the line, and I just hope that we can move forward in a logical way, and not a way where we're trying to knock people down, like the existing status quo of white males, discounting them and just doing with all this other bullshit.
I think if I were to justify it, if I was to argue for them, right, I would say that the idea is to clear up the idea space from white males and white people, right? Because there's so many white people out there, and we have privileged voices because we have the time, the effort, the energy, whatever. Maybe we even have the audience, right? Maybe people like looking and seeing white people more. Actually, historically speaking, the lighter your skin color is, the more likely you are to be royalty in any given country around the world, right? So basically, white people are more likely to be in privileged positions and spread their ideas. And so getting white people to shut up is the only way to actually allow for these other voices and these other ideas to be heard, I guess. That's the best justification I could possibly come up with why I shouldn't be, allowed in this dialogue. Hell, I'm so educated and used to speaking that I don't know, like, I'm the guy who talks in class, I'm one of those people who likes to participate because, by golly, I've been molded through my privilege in the fact that I like to speak during class because that's what I like to do. I don't fear the judgment of other people in the room.
And that is a privilege.
It is. Yes, the privilege to not be fearful, right?
It is a big privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if just because you're a white male that's why you're unfearful. Like, I didn't talk a ton in class, so
I mean, you don't have to worry
why
about
he's unfearful, but it enables him to be unfearful in cases where, say, a minority would have a reason to be fearful.
Yes. If you're a minority, I think you spend a lot of time doubting yourself. But I wanted to actually go back to something else that was brought up, which was
political college, or education at all, which is another problem, And I've brought this example up on the other podcast in the past. I was talking to a graduate colleague from the South Valley, which is not a great area in Albuquerque. I mean, it's a great area, but it may not be particularly safe.
It's a shithole.
He was saying, like, a lot of the people she grew up with, it's like, are you going to burden your family with college debt, or are you going to go sell cocaine like a fucking responsible adult, and make something of yourself? And so, like, not only would there be, like, expectations about speaking in class, but, like, a lot of people would just feel weird being in, like, why am I in a college? This is like a fucking white douchebag thing, Like, and it comes down to what I was trying to say about Jake's, insistence on useful insistence on parsing things in terms of, like, expectation, because I think that people go about their day and they're treated a certain way, and they don't realize that there's another perspective in the picture, and then you have other people who have the minority perspective, and maybe they don't realize that, like, there's a safe, comfortable way to feel instead of feeling fucking persecuted all the time. And so the problem is really that you just have people dealing with two different interpretations of the same reality and that are somehow unable to engage the other.
Well,
like, you have a dialogue consisting of two monologues.
why would you even take another perspective when your world around you is almost compelling you to stick with the one that you have? If you're someone from a impoverished minority population, why would you try to go and change and take this other perspective? Like, you're basically ostracizing yourself from your prime group or whatever. Like, suddenly it's like you've abandoned yourself to the white people, you know, and you've changed. Suddenly, like, you know, I don't know. I think there's actually like a Nas lyric about it. He's too rich to hang out with the homies, but he's too black to like associate with normal. I want everyone to know that
by the bucket, no familiar faces around, ain't gotta grab the musket. Yeah, he's talking about like he's the only black in the fucking club with the 1% white. It's like where all the hustlers went, you know? Is he's either got, and I've heard other rappers complain about this in interviews. It's not just Nas. It's like, well, I'm rich now, so I have like people that just don't fucking get it, or I can go back to the people in the hood that just don't fucking get it, you know, and they're like trapped between worlds.
So I think that would be a potential problem.
So, question: how do we mend this this gap between between sets of cultural expectations without losing our sense of identity?
I guess it would be it just sucks because I'd hate to say, like, you know, that's like one of the major problems with say like whitewashing. It's like, hey, you know, forget your race, forget that you're any of these things, and everyone else will forget it too, right? And it's like, well, I don't really think you should have to do that and to successfully perform in society, and people are still going to be racist at the end of the day. And to get back to this political correctness thing, and specifically Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, I was at a family gathering, and one of my uncles was like, he says exactly what I feel, right? He says exactly what I feel.
God.
Because my uncle, he hates immigrants, he hates Mexicans. I can't actually detail all of Trump's other positions or whatever.
Well, he doesn't have any other positions. That's his only position. That's why.
It's a good position if you want to rally the conservative base, okay? And basically, the reason why people like Trump is because he doesn't try to hide. He doesn't try to hide this like racism or this xenophobia.
We already knew that all those conservatives felt that, but no one had the balls to just go out and say
No one wanted to do it. And then it's like, you know what? All this political correctness is just garbage, okay? Basically, the average conservative, say my uncle, right? He doesn't like political correctness, and he thinks my racist uncle thinks that
you should reach him a blog called My Racist Uncle.
He thinks that the reason why I don't say send the Mexicans back to Mexico is because I'm afraid of offending people.
Get the fuck out of here. So he thinks everybody who's white believes like that, and they're fearful. They're all afraid.
Yes, dude, I guarantee it. And that's because that's how everyone thinks, okay? If you ask someone like, hey, like, you know, I was on Labor Day, I went to some party and got real drunk and got into a political conversation I should not have been in because I did not survey my audience correctly, and it was not a good time for me, okay? Basically, some girl asked me how I would change America. She was conservative and trolling, and I was like, well, first thing I'd do is legalize weed. And she's like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, that's your most important policy. And it's like, no, it's important because, you know, it gets all these people out of prison. And then I was like, next most important thing is you know, we gotta stop like having all these young black people just get killed by police officers for doing nothing, right? And wow, man, you should see the. Yeah, and get them out of the prison too.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall during that party with all those rednecks in the room.
Dude, it was so crazy.
Well, I'm proud of you, Jake. Fuck those people.
Oh, dude.
That's being a social justice warrior, dude. That's looking, you know, seeing that like maybe your neighbor's in trouble and maybe you're not gonna fucking put up with that bullshit on your own goddamn block. You know, I'm glad that you did that, man.
Well, I mean, per usual, I'm all about grand scheme, like taking the macro look. As the micro view and like changing my community, I really don't. I guess I've really never been sold on that, even though I've done like a ton of community service in my life and blah blah blah. For some reason, it just doesn't really seem like I'm making that. I see that broad policy is what changes things. You know, like the Supreme Court declared like any anti-gay marriage law unconstitutional. Like, wow, that's broad. Talk about social justice. Talk about social change right there.
I'm so happy with that ruling.
It's a broad policy change. But anyway, during that same conversation, I was doing this rundown. Like, I was talking about how there's disadvantaged people and how they can't really control their circumstances. And so when I was talking about how there's a negative view of welfare in our country and how, you know, it's hard for these people to break out of this cycle of poverty. And people, audience were just like, wait, no, like, another person has poor circumstances. That doesn't mean they can't break free. And it's like, you assume because I can work, I can get a job, I can drive a car, I have all this stuff, anyone can do it. Because as a privileged white person, okay, I think that anyone can do what I do because we're all the same. There's nothing special about me. I'm whitewashed, I'm bland, I have no culture, I have no personality. Anyone can do what I do. And everyone thinks that. Or everyone thinks, okay, if you are not a liberal, okay, more likely than not, you think that most people think just like you do. Okay, imagine someone who's like if you're having like a sheep or wolf conversation. Like, are you a sheep or are you a wolf? And like the wolf person, more likely than not, thinks everyone else is going to be a wolf, so they choose to be a wolf. Okay, because it's like the thieves versus the farmers, right? Are you going to be a thief or are you going to be a farmer? And so many people are like, you know what? I'm going to choose to be the thief because everyone else is going to be thinking like me and steal. And so what ends up happening is everyone in the world steals from each other instead of farming. It's like a
prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah, it's a prisoner's dilemma. And so I would say I'm really generalizing here. I would say the entire conservative base thinks exactly like that because they're like, I know how I think, that's how everyone else thinks. My world supports that. What happens to me supports that. This is my world, this is how the world works. And I guarantee you a majority of conservatives think that other white people don't say they hate Mexicans because they're afraid of being called a racist.
I mean, I just don't understand. Can somebody explain this to me? Why would anyone hate Mexicans to begin with? You know, do they think that they cost us money? Is that why? Dude, I don't believe they cost us money. They don't cost me money. Dude. I don't pay. I'm making $34,000 a year, and sorry, Jake, but I don't pay any federal taxes because of a great tax plan.
And B, okay, first of all, it's not shit. And B, fucking, you gotta put yourself in their shoes, man.
Put myself in their shoes?
Hold on, man.
Put yourself in the racist shoes.
You can't
put yourself in the racist shoes.
Hold on. I think that when you have an influx of unskilled labor into a market, it actually is a bad thing overall. It drives wages down for everybody. Instead of hiring construction workers that are here legally.
Ryan, I would like to point out that it doesn't necessarily drive wages down as long as you mandate that the minimum wage is really high on a federal level.
Well, guess what?
Well, they're undocumented workers, so it's all under the table.
That's right. And guess who's paying these undocumented workers?
The corporations.
No, not the corporations. Small business owners. And you know what those small business owners are? They're fucking white males. And they're conservative, okay? And guess what? No conservative wants to blame another conservative for the fucked up thing that they're doing. So all these jobs being taken by Mexicans, done by the courtesy of small business owners in America.
You're right.
Not just jobs, but when they get hurt and stuff, a lot of times, obviously, hospitals take care of them, and it drives up healthcare costs.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
So it does affect. When you guys actually start making more money and having to pay for other people's healthcare, like I do, it does affect you. Like,
right, I'm probably never going to make as much money as you do. So
my premium rose 3 times after Obamacare.
What's that?
I mean, maybe if you're content, just.
I want you to, yes, Ryan. I think you make enough money, and you deserve every penny you make. except for what I decide to take away from you to pay for poor people who can't afford their basic necessities.
Well, what I'm saying is if you don't let as many immigrants into the country, I'm not saying to kick them out, that's unethical, but to say that immigration is a good thing.
No, like, I agree.
Immigration is in general a good thing.
If you were letting highly skilled, educated people that can help the economy and add knowledge to things.
Educated these immigrants' freaking children, then we would just solve the problem as a generation later. But we don't want to do that because education costs too much freaking money in this country.
It's the same problem. It's a cultural thing too. It's hard to educate in the inner city. Those kids don't want to listen to you, dude. They're sitting on their desks. They're punching each other. They have metal detectors in the school. How the hell do you get those kids to listen?
That's right. No, it's kind of like what Mike was saying earlier. There is a culture where they say, "Why should we play the white man's game? You should be out there dealing drugs, man." So that is a problem.
Nobody should have to play a rigged game. Like, white people shouldn't even have to play the white man game. It's ridiculous. So, but the point is, no.
I'm just using the example you used about the South Valley people.
What?
I was just using the example you used about the South Valley people.
I don't know why capitalism and being responsible has to be called the white man game. It's just taking.
Well, whatever. I'm just ignore the label I put on it. The example.
What do you mean responsible? Like define your term.
Listen, whatever.
Because the
example Mike used was that
money.
Mike, man, listen.
Gambling. What did that give people? Was that responsible or was it fiscally productive?
It was responsible and fiscally productive.
I mean, I've paid more in taxes than you have ever made in your entire life. I think
Ryan is a very responsible
your entire life.
Who's applied himself, and
my tax dollars have done more than anything that you've ever done.
You're such a good liberal, Ryan.
Ryan, you do deserve finer things in life. I'm just very happy you're in a high tax bracket.
Paying your taxes on time. I'm so proud of you, man.
$50,000 to the IRS. That they had to, if you believe in your social programs, then my $50,000 did a lot more work than you're ever gonna do.
Well, so if you're a person who believes in macro policy, yes.
Hold on. Are we talking about output or labor here?
This is degenerating, folks.
What are you talking about? I've paid $50,000. My best year, I paid the IRS over $50,000. I made like 200. I paid them over 50,000.
Sure, but something I said earlier, it doesn't really matter what your conditions are. It matters whether or not your idea is right or wrong. So while I applaud you, Ryan, for paying your taxes and the social benefits that come from that.
Mike said that, because he's a professional gambler, he does nothing to society. I mean, if anything, you should think I'm a Robin Hood because I basically take rich dudes' money from them. I don't take people's money.
That's true.
Robin Hood.
Robin Hood.
It's all about perspective, man.
No, Ryan, I respect people like you.
I'm not trying to tear you down personally. I'm just saying.
Did we lose Mike?
Working and being responsible. It's like, no, you're not being responsible by making money. You're just making money.
Now,
actually, I think it might be more responsible.
Making money is a responsibility, man.
That culture of dehumanizing greed.
Because I'm going to use my money to raise a family, to take care of my soon-to-be wife, to take care of my dogs, to have all my affairs tied into place. I mean, to say that that's not necessary, it's silly. To get back to the island analogy we talked about like a year ago, if you're on the island and you're not carrying your own weight, you're being sort of irresponsible.
All right, I'd like to make a final point here. I think
it's an interesting social contract. This is an interesting social contract argument that you're making, which is probably substantial enough to do a whole podcast episode about, and might have something to do with our next podcast episode, which is private.
That's right.
Which is private versus public space, right? Or what was it again?
It's good fences make good neighbors, or do they?
Because the idea of what is yours, what is mine, who is doing what, it's very interesting. It's an interesting thing, okay? And so I don't really want to get into social contract right now. I'd rather do a wrap-up of this episode. If you guys have any really final points that are a little bit back on, social justice warriors and political correctness.
Play this out because we're halfway deep in it now, and the viewers are going to feel cheated. I think there's
I feel like it was crap and kind of off track, but
forces of society with the rendition of that actual potential into like strictly monetary quantification. because then we're just moving. I mean, yeah, that's great, and I think it took a lot of skill, and I don't think you're an irresponsible person, but I think to say that somebody who gives $50,000 to the government is being responsible just for that reason is bullshit, because the $50,000 was already fucking there. Just moving money from place to place doesn't do anything but slow down the actual dynamic potential of people with ambition.
I think you're wrong, Mike, because in order for a market economy to work, it's based on exchanges, and the more exchanges that happen, it results in utility benefits for the people who are exchanging those money.
Not only that, every pot I win, I tip $1. I tip $5,000 to $7,000 a year to the people that work.
You're not like a bad person. This isn't about you.
Well, that's how the market economy works. So my money is being put to work. It's helping people feed their families and stuff. Whereas someone that is just merely a mooch of the system that basically gets government dollars when they could be working and providing for themselves, that person is a leech, pure and simple. They're not doing anything to the economy. We're working to support them in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying I'm anti-welfare. Some people need it. But to just say that everyone that produces and makes money and stuff is doing no good just because they aren't being creative or philosophizing. I mean, I'm just talking about from a purely pragmatic approach. Being a producer in the modern economy and spreading your money around, that is actually a worthwhile endeavor that is discounted by hippies, basically.
Well, I mean, you're right, Ryan, in a way, but I would also say that being creative, spiritual exercises, being involved with nature, say writing poetry, beauty seeking, all these things are also really important.
Why not do it all? I do all of that. Why the hell can't you make money and fucking be creative?
Well, I think you can do both, and I think that that's an important thing to do. But I would also say that it's also possible for some person who's just being a bum and not doing anything to also positively contribute to society. I would say it might be a stretch, okay? The question is, what is a person's actual impact? And that's very hard to measure because it's hard to quantify. And you know what's easy to quantify? Money. So
I would also wager that the people that are on low productivity, people that have low productivity, they're probably not actually doing anything great in their community. The majority of them are just lazy.
You're probably right, but
this is off point.
It's off the point, but it's all about how you can measure things and weigh things. And I agree with the idea that's like, yes, I think that participating in the market economy is productive, especially if pretty much whatever you do, as long as it's not like some kind of vulture capitalism or high-speed trading for that matter. Well, even those people are making money and putting it back into something, right?
High-speed trading is funny, like day traders, because they get wiped out, actually. It's a terrible gamble. So I'm glad they're in the market. As a long-term investor, it's actually, I end up with all their money sooner or later.
But, I mean, day traders, certain day traders can make money because they're capitalizing on market inefficiencies and weird trends and patterns. It's harder to do that nowadays. Some would say they serve a purpose in the market economy because it's to make markets more efficient, but I don't know. I mean, I agree that there's a lot of fucking ridiculous wealth being created for basically doing nothing. Okay?
Yes. Yeah. That is a worthy criticism. Okay? And I would say there's also a bunch of people out there aren't doing shit, but that doesn't mean it's a majority of them. But to close down, I'd like to hear your guys' final thoughts on social justice warriors.
I'll start.
Political correctness.
All right, let me start it off. So, okay, when it comes to the topic of we were teaming social justice warriors or social justicers or whatever we wanted to call them.
The socially just.
The socially just, yes. If they're extreme, all they're really doing is alienating anyone who is in a position of more privilege than they are from wanting to listen to them or wanting to help them. So it's completely counterproductive. And although I'm sympathetic to their viewpoints to a degree, I think they need to tone down the level of aggression. And other than that, I don't really bear them any ill will. It's not like I'm afraid they're going to take over the world or anything, because clearly they're not. They're out of power. They're not going to become in power. When it comes to this idea of political correctness and the universities trying to get rid of, like, microaggressions and trigger warnings, trying to put them in place, I guess, the trigger warnings, I think I'm okay with the trigger warnings. Like Mike was saying earlier, you have some people that have some real psychological hang-ups, like about maybe they were raped or something, and you're going to show them a movie where there's like a very graphic rape sequence in it, well, I don't care how culturally significant it is. You should probably tell them ahead of time, you know, like especially if their psychologist wouldn't recommend them seeing it, contrary to what Ryan may have been saying earlier. I think there are certain types of people who have like PTSD or something where you should warn these motherfuckers that you're about ready to see something that's going to trigger a mental condition. As for microaggression, it's probably mostly just bullshit, and we need to fight it back against that current. Those are my final thoughts.
Microaggression.
I think that certain examples of microaggression, yes. For example, calling America a melting pot. Yes, it's false. Okay, it's actually a salad bowl. We've all been over this. We all learned this in history. Okay. The fact of the matter is,
what about Jake's story about Amico? Would you call that a microaggression, or what would you call that?
I would call that racism. I would call that racism.
I would call that racism.
I wouldn't call that microaggression. Microaggression is more like it crosses the. It basically, most people, even most liberals, wouldn't consider it to be racism. They would just be like, well, it has vaguely racist overtones, and we need to get rid of it to purify our society in a liberal way. You know, it's different. It's extremist. I think it's extremist.
Okay, what about like when the Fox News anchor says like cholo or thug because they can't say spick and nigger on the air like Donald Trump fucking wants to or whatever? Is that a microaggression?
What are you talking about? How would that be a what? They don't say a cholo or thug. They don't say that.
News hosts call people thugs.
Bill O'Reilly does.
Yeah, thug is basically.
Okay, yes, I believe that calling a minority, say a black person, regardless of whether he's a thug or not, I think calling him a thug is probably I don't know. I think it's inappropriate. So I guess that's not a microaggression. I think micro-trivialize it though. It's a big fucking aggression.
Yeah, I would say that that's just racism.
It's just racism.
Racism, right? The reason why I don't like microaggression is it's basically something that someone didn't do on purpose. Like if I said America is like a melting pot, I'm just trying to say that's a bunch of people coming together, and my analogy is poor. So because I ignorantly said something, suddenly I'm like crossing the line, and while I totally understand that the proliferating ignorant ideas is probably not very good. Okay, I didn't I didn't mean to whitewash America. I didn't mean to take all the color out of it. I didn't mean to say that. It's just something that someone said, and so that I wish it was called involuntary discrimination or something, because when you say microaggression, it makes me think that that person intended on it, and I don't think they did. I don't think they've planned ahead of time. They're like, you know what? I'm going to call America a melting pot. Super liberal Sally takes it or something, just to fuck with them. That's not what people are doing. So
microaggressions are supposed to be either intentional or oftentimes unintentional. So I think
that's why it's bullshit, I mean, how are we supposed to have a discussion? Like the melting pot's a good example, Say somebody thinks that America's a melting pot, and they take all the baggage with it. They're like, that means we're all the same. They're thinking. Well, say they're not allowed to say that, even though it's really stupid. Say they're not allowed to say that because it's not politically correct. How are they ever going to change their mind on that? Who's gonna call them on it when nobody knows they think it? With these little tiny unintentional racisms, you need to be able to say them so that people can, in the public forum, can change their mind about them. That's what I think.
Yes.
Well, I think a lot of it, though, they're trying to bring to light things that we don't realize could be hurtful towards other groups of people. So it's, if you were unaware of this professor who basically listed the list of microaggressions, you probably would just continue speaking how you normally speak. And so she's trying to put out a list of things so that you could understand why these things are wrong.
I approve of that. I think that's a noble goal. List the things that people would find offensive and explain why they find them offensive. That's continuing the dialogue.
But I would say the problem is
that the law and be like, don't do this, don't say that, don't do that.
I could agree with the thug thing being sort of racist and stuff, obviously, but some of that other stuff, no. And I think that if people are finding offense with that, and they're way too sensitive that they're not going to make it in the world. The world's a harsh place. It's not going to cater to you. You can't just cry every time someone says something that you don't like. You know, that's just.
I gotta disagree. I gotta bring up something here, Ryan, because earlier you were afraid that our culture would change and we become wussies, right? Now you're saying that you're worried that these people won't be able to fit in with that they won't be able to survive in our culture because of this. But it sounded like you were more afraid of, this current actually turning into a giant wave and changing the cultural landscape. If that's the case, they would fit in. They'd survive because the world would have the corners padded. So which is it? Are you afraid that we're all going to?
I mean, it could be either. If it doesn't,
afraid that these people are going to die because the world's always going to be harsh?
I mean, I think that they're not going to die, but they will become unhappy, and they will become very cynical about things, and they will become emotionally detached or something. Or I don't know what's going to happen, man. But I don't like censorship imposed on me, and that's what I see. This is the liberal form of censorship, like maybe the anti-liberal, but it's basically the extreme left trying to tell you how to think and what you should say and do. And I
think I agree with you there on that statement. Yes.
I wanted to you said you mentioned crying wolf. I think that's actually another problem with the extremely socially just persons, because I feel like they're really nitpicking a lot of things about the world, right? And when it's like, what will happen, like when someone tries to pass something like totally crazy, like, I don't know,
like Donald Trump?
Yeah, say they try to pass some really draconian, crazy law limiting, like, like saying you can't be transsexual or something crazy like that, like you have to pick a gender, and people are just kind of like, nah, I don't really care. Like, I've already heard enough about how I'm so privileged and how my opinion doesn't matter that these people just aren't willing to stand up against something.
Because they need the masses in there. They need people
allies.
Like me.
It goes back to the same. You
can't ostracize.
You ostracize your allies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crying wolf too much, but
I guess. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask you if any closings, Mike.
I would like to thank all involved for their vigilance and passion, and trying to be good neighbors and trying to keep our block down, as it were, because there are not only micro but macro aggressions and predators and all kinds of terrible shit afoot. But I want to stress that you can't be the swords in the darkness if you're still afraid of the dark. And we might need more social justice warriors and fewer social justice priests. That's all I have, and you probably knew it before I said it. God bless America.
Well, folks, I was going to do the closer.
Oh, yeah, closing down.
Well, folks, that about wraps up today's episode. You are listening to Curious Monkey. Is that what it is?
It's Curious Human.
We should change it.
That's anthropocentric.
You're listening to Curious Human.
Bastard.
All right. If you're listening to Curious Human, you can contact us at the following email address. Ryan, take it away.
Just go to curioushuman.com, and you can contact us there. See you later. Thanks for watching.